Hi there. Today I'm going to review The Beatles in Hamburg by Spencer Leigh. And I have, of course, previously reviewed his book about the Cavern Club, and he really is the historian of Merseybeat, as he again demonstrates with this book. The connection between Hamburg and Liverpool has many strands. They're both port cities. They were both bombed heavily during the war. Hamburg suffered the first firestorm with Operation Gomorrah from Bomber Command, which devastated the city. And they both have a culture and an accent distinct from the rest of the country. But it's the musical link that is particularly interesting because it's unique for one city to send so many musicians to another. And the book, which I have here, The Beatles in Hamburg, really goes into all those aspects in detail. The type of music that was popular in Germany and in Hamburg in particular at the time was called Schlager music, and as you can see, it's pretty docile type of stuff. And the area of Hamburg where all the clubs are, St. Pauli, which is really a red light area, it's strip clubs, etc., wanted to attract punters by offering them music. And a connection was established between Alan Williams, a local promoter in Liverpool who ran the Jacaranda Club, and Bruno Koschmeider, who had a couple of clubs in Hamburg. Now that particular connection is very, very interesting, and it will be discussed with reference to another book. But nevertheless, Alan started to supply bands or groups to Hamburg. And the first one was a big success, and they wanted another one. So really, the only one he had available, they weren't the top in Liverpool by any means, but these were guys who didn't have day jobs, and that was the Beatles, or what became the Beatles. What they didn't have was a drummer, and they had to recruit Pete Best as the drummer. And at the time it was John, Paul, George, Stu Sutcliffe, and then they got Pete literally days before they went to Hamburg. Arduous trip in a minibus by road and sea and road, and then they finally turn up in a place behind the Reaper Barn, or off the Reaper Barn, and Grosse Freiheit, and they're decanted into the street, and their accommodation is, not to put too fine a point on it, abysmal. It was in a cinema around the corner. Anyway, so they start playing at the club, which is the Indra Club, and what I will do now is show a short film I made in Hamburg of the Indra. And coming up the Grosse Freiheit to the top end, we have the Indra. The Indra was the first club that the Beatles played in. It was a strip club at the time with an Indian or Southeast Asian theme, and it's still here, still functioning as a club. So they start playing at the Indra, and the hours are grueling, 6 to 8 hours a night. But what this did was build up a playlist, a set list, that they really became proficient at many genres of music, because what they decided, and this really is very interesting, was they wouldn't repeat. a song. Now, the chances of the same punters being in at 8 o'clock in the evening or 4 o'clock in the morning was slim, but they decided that if somebody was listening to them, they wouldn't hear the same song twice. So they would put slow numbers in, they would put ballads in, as well as the rock that they loved so much themselves. They do very, very long versions of numbers like What I Say, and this kept them going through the night. And it made them play, made them become a remarkably tight group. The other thing they had to do, at the insistence of Bruno Koschmider, was entertain the crowd, make a show. So they learned how to play the crowd and entertain people. And again, it added to the whole professionalism that they developed gradually in Hamburg, which had been lacking in Liverpool. And it allowed their talents to come to the fore, really. The other thing was they met a group of local Hamburg youngsters that called themselves the X's. They were mainly art school graduates, and these were very influential. Stuart fell in love with Astrid, who was a very talented photographer, and the other people, Jürgen and so on, in the group, a group of X's, started hanging out with the Beatles and became their fans in Hamburg, and they influenced their fashion. At the time, the Beatles were wearing these lilac coats, horrible lilac coats, and silly hats, and they went and bought firstly leather jackets. Later they bought leather pants as well, and cowboy boots on the Reeperbahn, and they changed their look. Later on in the story, they also changed their hairstyles, obviously. There is the thing about money. There is a conception that when they were in Hamburg, they were kind of starving and they ate cornflakes and things. That's probably true, but they didn't need to, because they were earning far more money than their parents were earning back home. They were paid quite well. They were doing the hours for it, but they were actually doing what they loved. And they were living in stinking accommodation, eating cornflakes, but it was the life that they wanted. They wanted to be professional musicians, and the Hamburg experience turned them into that. So they returned to Liverpool, and in December of 60, they played at the Little Town Hall, 27th of December. They were announced as being from Hamburg, and they stepped forward, started Long Tall Sally, and things were never the same after that. Their impact on the Liverpool scene was massive. Their driving, powerful rock music, their brimming confidence bordering on arrogance, their ability to entertain, the way they looked, the casual attitude they had, not bowing or introducing numbers in a normal way, had tremendous impact. And there were a lot of local musicians at the show, and every single one of them who's commented on it said the same thing. It all changed. They all wanted to be like the Beatles. And from then on, the Beatles were number one. They topped the bill wherever they played. And subsequently, the following year, 61, they returned to Hamburg. And then in 62, they opened the Star Club. Now, when they returned to Hamburg, they played at the Top 10, which was a much more professional club. And they had met Tony Sheridan, who was very influential on them. And I won't say any more, because there is a biography of Tony Sheridan that I will be reviewing. Excuse me. The Star Club was a very professional setup. It was a form of cinema, and it was far different from anything in Liverpool at the time. And they first went there in April of '62, and that's when they found out that Stuart had died. He'd stayed in Hamburg. Paul had become bass player, and unfortunately died of a brain problem. They made another 2 visits to the Star Club later in the year, later towards the end of '62, but nobody could have predicted that within 3 years they would take America by storm. The story is just amazing. It's all in the book, and it's all well worth reading. Now, in November of '63, the Cavern organised a trip to Hamburg because the BBC were making a programme called Wacker Mac which was about the Hamburg-Liverpool connection, and they wanted a group of us kids from the Cavern to go out there. I was 16 at the time. It was November of '63. We flew out on a Dakota from Speak and landed in Hamburg. And when we landed, we were given the news that President Kennedy had been assassinated. We went to our hotel. We went to a hotel called the Fremdenheim on the Reeperbahn. And it was great, and we were all hanging out together. We were given memberships to the Star Club and lapel badges, which were a kind of a hands-off badge. No one interfered with you if you were associated with the Star Club, because Manfred Weisleder, who owned it, was a pretty fearsome character. I returned to Hamburg a couple of times as an adult, and I had a look at the hotel we stayed at. It's still there, the Fremdenheim. It's got a different name now. It's in a courtyard off the Reeperbahn. I wouldn't even set foot in the courtyard as an adult. It's totally different. But as a kid at 16, the contrast with Liverpool was amazing. All the pubs in Liverpool closed at 10 o'clock back then, and nothing else was open. I think there was one place we could get a cup of tea down by the pierhead. Buses stopped running about 11 o'clock, and that was it. In Hamburg, you could get currywurst at 2 o'clock in the morning. All the clubs were open in St. Pauli, and it was thriving. And to us, it was amazing. Totally different scene. Very, very interesting. And the book I found fascinating. Obviously, it took me back, but it really showed the importance of Hamburg in the Beatles story. Without Hamburg, there's no doubt in my mind that the Beatles wouldn't have made it the way they did. Obviously, Liverpool and the Cavern Club was just as important in some ways, but without Hamburg, that wouldn't have happened either, probably. So that connection is quite important. Unfortunately, like Liverpool, the Hamburg powers that be don't really highlight the connection with the Beatles. They have in recent years dedicated the Beatles Platz, which is at the junction of the Reeperbahn and the Große Freiheit, but that's about it really. But you can dig up the locations, and in another book I'll be reviewing, I'll be talking about that, the places that have Beatles connections. Spencer Leigh went to Hamburg. He researched this very, very deeply. He's also produced a DVD, and I'll put a link to where you can get that, and together with the book it makes terrific reading. And as I say, can't emphasize the connection deeply enough. The Beatles are still the top group in the world, and it all traces back to the Hamburg days.